That's your aunt.
Yeah, that's my.
Good afternoon. Can everyone on Zoom hear me okay?
Yes.
Could I ask all of you on Zoom to mute your microphones, please?
No, but here, why don't you sit here?
My name is Mark Degenhart. I'm the chaplain here at the Atrium. On behalf of the family, staff, and residents here at the Atrium, I'd like to welcome everyone to celebrate the life of George Cleveland. George died on Friday, April 22nd, at the age of 101 here at the Atrium. For the past 2 months, we've been grieving and noticing the absence of our father, grandfather, great-grandfather, companion, and friend. And it's okay to grieve. But George was always such a positive, optimistic guy. He would want today to be a celebration. Because of his passion for life, family, friends, and good times, he would want us to leave here today changed and reinvigorated with a renewed focus on the meanings for our own lives. May we listen attentively so that our spirits will be renewed. May we, like George the pilot, always look up to the blue sky to see the many blessings and positives in this world and in our own lives. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Russ Cleveland to make some remarks about his father.
Okay, dear, it's going. Steady.
Good afternoon, everyone, and our Zoom participants. The last time we were here, we had a imaginary flight. I believe it was from Newark to Chicago with Captain George. It certainly was. Give a tippet, maybe. Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah, that's a little better. Want to thank you all for coming and joining us. I have a little eulogy here to express, my feelings. Not loud enough? How's that? Better? Okay. All right. Judging by, my dad's age, I had a great interest in longevity, just to get an idea, maybe, what was ahead of me. So I did a little reading, and I came across an article. It's refers to a rural village on the Japanese island of Okinawa. And they've done a great study of the residents there. And on that island, in that little town, is a stone marker. And carved in that stone is a saying that roughly translated.
I'm trying to get this screen up to size
80,
here,
you
but
are
there's a picture in the top
already
right.
a youth, or merely a youth. At 90,
I got the volume up.
your ancestors invite you to join them. You might want to say to them, I think I'll wait till I'm 100. And then at that point, if you might want to join them, you might want to consider it. So I think those are words to the wise. But in the study, they found that there are several things that maybe were contributing to this longevity. And they concluded that about 2/3 of this was related to diet and activities. So I can really attest to what Dad ate and did here. I think that kept him going. And I'm sure the Spring Point is proud of their contribution to that. So then the other third is something that I guess you can call genetics. It's built in. Generally speaking, you need a genetic rocket booster to get you to that age 100 milestone there. So George was lucky to have that extra oomph and push him to get to that centenarian mark, because I think he was really looking forward to that. But all good things must come to an end. And if he were here with us, I'm sure he would tell you he had a good ride. So I would like to read a poem that many aviators are familiar with. It's called High Flight. It's by John Gillespie Magee. Magee was a Royal Canadian pilot and in the World War II, who unfortunately died after he wrote this poem, but he movingly depicts what it is like to leave the earth and one's everyday life behind them and fly, even if it's your last flight. Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter's silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds and done 100 things. You have not dreamed of wheeled and soared and swung. I, in the sunlit silence, hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air and up the delirious blur burning blue. I've topped the wind-swept heights with easy grace, where never lark or even eagle flew. And while with silent lifting mind I trod the high unsurpassed sanctity of space, put my hand out and touch the face of God. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. I'm impressed that you would read that from your phone rather than paper. I trust paper more than electronic sometimes. Next, what we'll do is we'll turn to anyone from the Zoom that would like to make a comment. You could unmute your microphone. Put your hand up so others on the Zoom know that you want to speak. Anybody from the Zoom? Okay, Debbie.
I have a picture and
1 second.
everyone,
I can't hear you.
Russ, remember that? Can they see it?
My mom
Oh,
wants
you're
to
holding
show
up a
a
picture.
picture of George.
Can everyone see that? She's holding up a picture of a large prop plane with presumably George and one other person in front of it.
Yeah, that's a restored Eastern Airlines DC-6 on the flight out of Teterboro. We wanted him to get telling him where he was going. We did some sightseeing around New York City.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, my mom had that picture hanging up in her house.
ask Russ what year that.
Anyone else from Zoom? Okay. Is there anyone from the room here at the atrium that would like to speak? If you'd like, you'd have to come up to the microphone now so everyone on the Zoom could hear you. Anyone? George? Yeah.
You never know, I was a mechanical engineer. Huh? Can you hear me?
Right up to your mouth.
Like that?
Yeah, as loud as you can.
Can you hear me? All right. I was privileged to have George as the best friend. We did a lot together and had a lot of fun. I miss him very much. There were two athletic feats he did that I'd have to mention. Playing pool, he completed a 3-cushion bank shot that I've never seen, and I just was amazed. He also played cornhole, and his team was against my team, and we were ahead 20-1. And you know, we lost. So those were two feats I don't think anybody could ever meet. So I'll miss him. He was a very good friend. Never heard a bad thing about George, only good. And we had a lot of fun. Mhm.
Bob, did I see your hand up? Thanks. Right this way. Thank you. Right up to your left.
Hi. Alan and I arrived here in August. Probably our first best friend, not the best friend, but a great friend, was George. We shared a lot of time together having meals because Ellen and I and George all grew up in Nutley, New Jersey. We shared names of places, streets, addresses, functions, just about everything that one could remember about Nutley, because George had a great memory. Well, the most impressive thing about George is he spoke about his youth with so much love and devotion and respect. And it taught us a lot about how much we appreciated our past. I think the words of Bob Dylan can really depict what George would say to you today if he were able to be here with us. We were struck by these words when we saw him at his 101st birthday, and they're kind of special. And I think they would have been something that he would have thought he saw fit to say today. May your hands always be quick. May your feet always be swift. May you have a strong foundation when the winds of changes shift. May your hearts always be joyful. May your song always be sung. And may you stay forever young, which he did. God bless you, George. We all love you.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, I'm George's daughter-in-law, Carol. I couldn't have had a better father-in-law, as well as his wife, Joan, mother-in-law, the two best people ever. And how it affected my kids. My son took after him flying. He flies. And my daughter's daughter, our granddaughter, was in school shortly after he died. And the teacher noticed her head down on her desk and went over to her, and she was crying. And she said, "Why are you crying?" And she said, "Because I miss great grandpa." So the teacher went over and hugged her. And after crying a little bit, she then went and played. But he was a good influence on our kids. He and my mother-in-law, Joan, couldn't have been kinder people to my grandchildren, to my children. their grandchildren and how much they were both loved so very much. And fun. We had many years of fun. The two of them were a great pair. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room? Okay. Grace, can you come up?
In front of it?
Yeah.
I remember about 2 years ago, can you all hear me? Oh, that's right. 2 years ago, George and a few other residents went on a trip to see the big auditorium at Ocean Grove. I don't know what was going on, but when we all gathered afterwards, there were only about 8 of us on the bus. George wasn't there. And we had to sit and wait for him. And about 15 or 20 minutes later, George came down the street with the walker. He got on the bus and he said, well, I just had lunch with a group of people from Texas and they bought my lunch. And I told them my stories. That's why they bought him lunch. I'm sure that those people never met anyone like George. And he certainly gave a good impression of New Jersey. His stories were fun and lively. He never seemed sad or down. He liked everyone. He knew everyone's name. Shortly after they arrived, he was the friendliest person at the atrium. That's it.
Anyone else? Anyone else in the room? For those of you on the Zoom, there's someone in the back of the room that will not be able to make it up, so I apologize that you probably won't be able to hear them.
George and I moved into the acre about the same time. I know he had been a pilot. I told him my first flight had a bar. I mean, knew exactly what it was. So we used to sit on the deck, and every time the plane to fall, he knew where it was going and where it came from. And finally got tired of doing the Kentucky Derby, so I did it for 2 years. And he was such a great guy. I still love him. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Anyone else in the room? Would you mind coming up? For the people on the side. For the people on the side. They won't be able to hear you.
Four years ago, I arrived at the atrium. Being a new kid on the block, I didn't know what to do. But I saw something on the bulletin board to go to a concert. I signed my name. There was one other name with me, and none other ever got put on. So I came down to the desk and I said, you know, there's only 2 of us signed up for this concert. Is it canceled? They said, oh no, we only cancel if one person signs up. So I waited for the night, and it came time to come downstairs, and I waited, and the driver came for that, parked a new car, our limousine or whatever it is, in front of the car, and George came down with his walker. And I said, well, it'd be easier if you go in the front seat. So you get in the front seat with the driver, and I sat in the back seat. So we chatted all the way to Colts Neck. We were going to Colts Neck High School to see the Colts Neck orchestra band. My grandson played in that band, so I knew the ropes. I knew where to go. I could direct the driver. So I showed them where to park so that we had the least distance to walk to get into the auditorium. When we got there, it was a little bit early, and I introduced him to people that I knew from going to this concert. There were some nurses that I worked with at Riverview Hospital, and other people that my grandson introduced me to. So during the intermission, my grandson and two other people that played in the orchestra came out, and we visited. I introduced them to George. The intermission was over. We sat down, and he blurted out, "I graduated from Nutley High School in 1938. Wow. Then the orchestra started playing, and I graduated from Nutley High School in 1951. I thought, wow, I've got a kinship with this band. Well, we determined that he grew up or lived 2.5 blocks from me. We never saw each other. We never met each other. We never knew anyone in common. Every time, or almost every time I saw him in the hallways, he'd say, "Another name, Thompson." No, I didn't know any Thompsons. So anyway, that was our connection. But he never gave up. He kept trying, blurting out names, and I never knew any of them.
Thanks for coming out. This way.
Fire.
Anyone else? Come up.
I will always remember George and his booming voice. He never needed a microphone, and that voice is so missed in the dining room, especially there. And I will always remember him as a gentle man. As booming as his voice was, he was just a caring, lovely man. And I will miss him.
Anyone else? Come up. We have one. We have a staff member.
Okay.
So like everyone said, George was always a very happy man. We had the pleasure of doing a lot of things for him. Oh, sorry. 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 Oh, gotta put my glasses on. So George was always, I don't think it's on. It says mute. So he was always happy, just like everyone said he was. We had the pleasure of having to do things for him, and no matter what, who we called for him, we would call a doctor's office, the hospital, he's coming back in for something. And they'd be like, you know, usually they say date of birth, and they go, "Oh, George is coming? Great. We love him here." And it was everywhere. Everyone knew his name. You didn't have to ever give his date of birth. And they were like, "Oh my God, we love that guy. He has so many stories. He has so much to tell. And he's always so pleasant." Some people come in, they're like, "Oh, you know, grumpy." And he's like, "Hey, everyone, it's me, George, I'm back." So they really, really enjoyed wherever he went, everyone enjoyed him. I want you to know that for the IL nurses, he was just so kind and pleasant as he was to everyone else. And we were so sad to hear of his passing, and we're gonna miss him a lot. And we hope that all of you are around as long as he was so that you can amuse us too.
Anyone else? Okay, next, we're gonna have a resident, Irmgard Larson. And she's gonna read an article that George published in a resident newsletter a few months back called Upside Down.
George's nice family asked me to read this letter. A letter written by George when a young cadet at the U.S. Army Air Corps. I had completed my primary training at Garner Field in Uvalde, Texas, and had a grand total of 60 hours of flying time in my logbook. We were going to Waco, Texas for basic training in a more sophisticated airplane, the Vultee B-13. The cockpit was enclosed with a canopy. It was a metal with fixed landing gear where the wheels were always hanging down, with a tail wheel, a radial engine of considerably more horsepower, and a two-pitch propeller selectable for takeoff and for cruise. I had suffered some time while in primary training with a fungus infection in both legs that caused considerable discomfort when I walked. Well, wouldn't you know it, the military likes to march. So that's all we did until our flight training began. I stood as much of this marching as I could and checked myself into the base hospital. When they saw how bad my legs were, they admitted me, and I remained there for about 3 weeks while they tried all kinds of treatments for my legs. The hospital stay set me back from my class far enough so I could never catch up. So I was held back until the next class began. Everything went well, and I enjoyed flying the BT-13, especially formation flying with other planes, which we did not do in primary training. Now came time for my first solo cross-country flight. We were given a map and plotted a round-trip course back to our air base with an intermediate landing at a grass auxiliary field. There were no provisions for holding the map, so I had to place it on top of my legs along with a control stick in between them. This method of flying was called pilotage, where you held your course and followed your progress on the map. The next thing I knew was that the map slipped between my legs and was now laying at the bottom of the fuselage, well out of reach. I had visions of my being washed out as a pilot for not completing the cross-country flight. What could I do now? West Texas is as flat as a tabletop and has few outstanding geographical features to orient yourself. My only option was to try to find a small town and try to learn its name and orient myself. Most Texas towns have a water tower with its name painted on it, but I still needed the map to do that. The only thing that came to mind was to fly the plane upside down and hope that the map would fall back into the cockpit and then I could grab it. I then climbed a couple of thousand feet to a safe altitude for this upside down maneuver and rolled the airplane over. The map fell back into the cockpit along with all the accumulated debris which was in the belly. What a relief I felt. My next step was to locate a small town with a water tower and locate it on the map, then plot a new course mentally to reach the auxiliary field. I located a small town with a water tower and had to drop down fairly low to check for any obstructions I needed to avoid when I made my really low pass by the water tower to read its name. The two-pitch propeller on the BT-13 is very loud at takeoff and landing, and when more power is needed, as in the case of my low pass. The whole town heard this first pass, and I remember seeing all the kids coming out of the school building and watching. When I learned where I was, I began to climb and mentally plotted a new course from my known position to the auxiliary field. There were some very anxious moments for me until I began to hear some voices on the radio, and I was able to spot the auxiliary field with a number of Part B-13s. The landing was the best three-point landing I have ever made. I then flew back to the airbase with no questions asked by the instructors and none by me. I was now a happy aviation cadet. George Cleveland. George, you have always been an ace pilot to us, talented and loving, and we feel fortunate to have known you. May you rest in eternal peace, in clear skies and among fluffy white clouds, at a peace we can only imagine to be. Amen.
Next, we have another resident, Iris Henchman, to read Psalm 23.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
And we'll have another staff member, Doc Britton, come up to sing Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Was grace that told my heart to thee. And grace my fears relieved. How precious is that grace the I first believed. When we fell 10,000 bright shining as the sun. We've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Amazing grace.
Days like today are filled with mixed emotions. Grief at the loss of a loved one, but also joy for a life well lived, gladness for wonderful memories created with family and friends. But days like this can also be learning moments. We can look at aspects of George's life and adopt some positive aspect of him that we want to make our own and carry out of this room and into the world today. George certainly had a unique story, but from his obituary, I was particularly struck by these three things. First, he picked beans as a youngster for 5 cents per bushel. 2, he had no special heroes. He liked people who made things happen. And 3, he'll be remembered for his winning smile, strong handshake, art of conversation, good spirit, humor, enthusiasm, and zest for life. So I ask, what matters to each of us? How would our obituary read? How do each of us want to be remembered? I also want to spend a moment on George's article, Upside Down, read by Irmgard. The lines that grabbed my attention: I rolled the plane over, the map fell back into the cockpit, along with the accumulated debris that was in the belly of the plane. What a great metaphor for when our lives turn upside down. What sort of issues come out of the woodwork? When our lives turn upside down, what is our map? What is our compass, our foundation to help us through, to get us reoriented? Psalm 23 offered one option. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you, Lord, are with me. Regardless of our age or health, we have no guarantee of the number of years or days on this earth. We look at every day, month, and year as a gift. Like a pilot, do we plan our trip in advance, or do we just let our trip plan us? I've always loved two expressions. Of those to whom much is given, much will be expected. And be the change you want to see in the world. Do we have guiding principles? And if so, what are they? The passing of loved ones means different things to different generations. To Russ, Tom, Nancy, you now become the oldest generation. George's sister Lillian becomes the last survivor of 4 kids in that generation. And George's 7 grandkids and 13 grandchildren will miss their grandfathers, his stories, and his stellar example of how to lead a life. But family and all of us can leave here blessed, reinvigorated, knowing that our lives have been enriched because George flew out in front of us, using his book of maps and directions, guiding through both fair skies and turbulence, around lightning bolts and other impediments that might have tripped him up and that could trip us up. I close in prayer. Heavenly Father, we acknowledge the uncertainty of our life on earth. We are given a mere handful of days, and our span of life seems like nothing in your sight. But we rest assured knowing that even in the valley of the shadow of death, you are with us. We thank you for the gift of George, who graced each of our lives in so many ways. We thank you for all the memories we have of him from over the years. We know you will be with us on the joyful days, but also walk with us on those down days when some comment, event, or item reminds us of George and that he is no longer with us. Help each of us to adopt one positive aspect of George and to make it our own. In so doing, helping to make the world a better place for your greater glory and to carry on his legacy. Help us all to live each day as if it might be our last, always remembering that each new day is a new voyage, a new flight plan. May the Lord bless us all, protect us from all evil, and bring us to everlasting life. Amen. And that concludes our ceremony this afternoon. I want to thank everyone on the Zoom for coming. I thank everyone here in the room as well. And for those in the room, there are light refreshments in the back of the room. So stay as long as you like. Thank you. Take care.